Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Jacob Bank, who is the founder and CEO at Relay.App. Now, in my view, 2023 and 2024 were kind of the years of the chat tool, Chat GPT and Claude and the other ones. And it feels to me like 2025 is the year where AI agents are really breaking out. And Jacob's been at this for a while. He has impressive background. He's a graduate of Cornell in computer science, PhD almost at Stanford. He left to do more important things. And then he was a director of product management at Google for 6 years. And he's been running Relay.App before this whole, thing became huge. It started since 2021. So Jacob, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Will.
So, all right, I have a ton of questions. First, and we were getting into this a little bit before I hit record. We're going to get into your tool. I think we're going to do a demo and walk through and actually build a AI agent on this very episode. But before that, what are the types of things that an AI agent can do?
In general, the mental model that works best for people is thinking about the tasks that they would give to a junior level employee or an intern. And so unlike chatbots like Chat GPT, which are very good at taking in a piece of text like a question or a research inquiry and producing a wall of text, agents can do a couple things differently. Number one, they can work on your behalf in the background when you're not directly staring at your computer screen. Number two, they can reason in a more advanced and multi-step way across what you're trying to accomplish. And then number three, they can actually do work on your behalf in your tools. I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you've used ChatGPT in the past to help write blog posts. In the past, what you'd have done is you'd say like, I'm going to ChatGPT. Here's the topic of my blog post, like how to make a great lasagna. And you would ask ChatGPT to produce one. You would give it some feedback to make it better. And then you would copy and paste the result from ChatGPT onto your blog site. Let's say instead you asked your AI agent to every week write a blog post about a new recipe. And so the AI agent would come up with an idea of what recipe it wants to cover, like maybe it wants to make a steak this week. It would automatically draft the blog post for you. It may ask you for some feedback, like, hey, did I pick a good recipe? Did I do a good job cooking this steak? So you can still interact with your agent, but it decided on its own that it was time to get to work. It did the work on its own, and it can even write the blog post into your blog system and publish it for you. And so you should think of this less of a thought prop partner, less of a tool that you go to interact with, more like an intern that would work on your behalf on a mission that you give it and take it all the way end to end, including doing the job.
So it can actually, do things in the world. It can interact with things. What is the range of systems? Now, before we recorded, I was asking, you were telling me like, yeah, I can send an email on your behalf. And I said, what about log into my bank? And you said, well, maybe not that. What are the range of systems that it could work with? And are there some things that it can't do, like on the internet? Can it basically do anything on the internet that I could do here at my desk?
So this is where I'll give a slightly different answer between Relay.App, the tool that I'm working on, and AI agents in general.
Okay.
So broadly speaking, there are two ways that AI agents can take action on your behalf. One is they can make direct computer calls called API calls, application programming interface. They can make a direct computer call into one of the tools that you use. So for example, one of the things that people use our agents for very commonly is writing emails. And so when one of our agents writes an email, it doesn't like load a Gmail web browser and click around. It just directly makes a call to the Gmail service and says, I would like to send an email to Will with this subject and this body. And so our AI agent can talk to any of the tools that you likely use day to day for whom we can make these sorts of direct connections. So if you use Salesforce or Calendly or Microsoft Teams or Google Calendar or HubSpot, like all of that is totally in scope for both our AI agent and then many other AI agent platforms that work in this way. The second approach is that the AI controls your computer. And so if you follow the news from Anthropic closely, you'll see that they launched a computer use capability. And that's just a fancy way of saying that the AI is looking at the screen all the time and it can click buttons on it. And so for a tool like ours, Relay.App, we focus on business productivity applications and automated calls. And so that's why I said we would not be able to log into your bank and do actions on your behalf. A tool that was using the computer use-based approach of just like mimicking what you're doing in the browser may be able to log into your bank. Now that would depend on two-factor authentication and the captcha, and I'll forget about all those details for now. But broadly speaking, there's two ways agents can interact with the world. They can speak computer, like they can speak as a computer directly to other services, or they can mimic a human and act in your browser.
Okay. So one class of tools that's interacting with APIs, they can interact with any, website or tool that has an API, which probably includes your email browser, whatever email you use, Google or Microsoft. And if you have some kind of CRM system, it probably has an API. What about, and I suppose at least Google's tools like Microsoft, Google Slides and Google, Word, Google Docs, I guess it could work with them. I'm not sure about the Microsoft.
Yeah, it would work with the cloud-based versions of the Microsoft tools like Office 365. The way you should think about it is any business productivity tool that you use in a web browser almost certainly has an API that a system could interact with, whether it's your email marketing tool or your business intelligence tool. Like pretty much everything will have an API that an AI agent that's built on top of that framework could talk to.
Right. So there's sort of three categories. The one is the APIs. One is doing things actually on your computer screen as if it was you moving the buttons around. And then the other thing is AI kinds of inbuilt capabilities, like it could do a transcription, it could do summary notes, it could do sort of in its own AI brain things.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call that a third category of how the AI agent can interact with the world. I would put that in a different class of capability. So one problem AI agents need to solve is how do they work with your tools? How do they read in data from Salesforce? How do they write to Salesforce? And they can do that either via an API or they can do that via controlling your browser. That's how the agent interacts with the outside world. Secondarily, there's what are the capabilities that the agent has in terms of reasoning? What can it do? Can it extract information from a PDF? Can it translate information from one language to another? Can it turn text to speech, speech to text? Can it create videos automatically? Can it browse the web and do internet research? And those are the AI capabilities of the agent and to create an agent that can fully accomplish a job, you need to combine both. So let me give you like a classic example. A classic example would be I get some emails and sometimes they have PDF attachments that are invoices. And then I need to write those into a spreadsheet because I track my invoice spending. And so this agent would start with an interaction with the outside world. It would wake up whenever I get a new email. Then it would do some reasoning like, hey, does this email have a PDF attachment that looks like an invoice? Because it has some inbuilt ability to like take in this email and this PDF and make a decision about what it contains. If the answer is yes, then it would again do its reasoning and say, I want to extract the amount and the due date and the vendor. And then after it's done its AI thinking, it would then go back to writing that information into a spreadsheet, which would then interact with the outside world. So we often call this the AI sandwich, where there's some triggering event in the outside world, which is like the top bun. Then there's like the meat and the toppings, which is the AI thinking about what it needs to do in response to that change in the outside world. And then there's the bottom bun, which is taking an appropriate action. In the example I just mentioned, it's writing information to a spreadsheet, but you can imagine a different action in a variety of different use cases.
Okay. Another question I have before we jump into building one is what are the different ways that AI agents can be housed somewhere? So there's one class would be a tool like Relay.App, where on your cloud or your services, Relay sort of owns the tool and then it comes in and interacts with things. Are there other ones that would be on potentially like the customer, the client would just sort of own it? And is there ones that just get loose into the internet and the cloud and sort of live on their own and just wander around and kind of agents out freelancing out somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, I think there's three models to keep in mind. The first model is that there are some products that directly sell a pre-built AI agent. So, for example, these are very common in customer support tools today. If you've heard of Intercom has an agent called Finn. There's a company called Decacon. There's a company called Sierra. There's a company called Foresight. And all of those are selling pre-built custom AI agents that do support for you. Okay. And so it's for that one kind of vertical specific use case, and they build and create the agent. Whether it's hosted on their platform, hosted on your servers, that's sort of an implementation detail, but it's like specific to that use case and mostly pre-built.
You would train that customer service agent
on your knowledge base.
Your knowledge base, but it's sort of a single purpose thing that can send email, like React emails.
Exactly. You basically, you would give it if you purchase one of these customer support agents, there's an onboarding process where you give it all of your knowledge bases, you give it the historical support emails you've dealt with, and then you give it some set of actions that a support agent can take. For example, the support agent can reply to email. That might be the first one, but you might also give it the ability to trigger password reset emails, or you might give it the ability to issue refunds, whatever actions a support agent would typically take at your company. That's sort of class one, like the pre-built agents for a specific use case. Class two is custom built agents on sort of an easy to use platform for a non-technical audience. So that's like us at Relay.App. That's Lindy.ai, that's Relevance.ai, that's Zapier. You may have heard of some of the tools in that category. And these tools enable non-technical people to go to a website and say, I want to make an AI agent that does this, this, and this for me. And then it connects to your data and your systems, but it runs, it lives within that platform. And then the third option is that you have engineers in your company build your own agent. And that typically, that would involve a technical team. And there are a bunch of developer-focused frameworks that make it easy to build agents, or make it possible to build agents. I don't know that it's yet easy, but it's possible to build agents. And they have a bunch of different components to these developer platforms, like the reasoning engine and the evaluations and the planning. But my guess is that for most of the people listening to this, they probably won't be building agents themselves in code. They'll either consider buying a pre-built off-the-shelf agent, for example, for customer support, or they'll want to create their own agent using an easy-to-use online platform.
Yeah. And in that middle category, it seems like there's two options. One is the one that is going to mainly interact with APIs, and then the other one is something that will just almost take over your desktop for you and sort of be seeing what you see. And
and there are several companies in both categories. I have not yet seen a reliable, predictable, useful version of the latter yet. But I'm sure it'll happen at some point. Right now, the fully browser-based approach tends to be a bit too flaky for real use, at least in the testing that I've done. Whereas the API-based approach gives you much clearer guardrails of what the agent should be able to do.
Cool. Why don't you give us, just sort of list off several different of the most common use cases for Relay.App, for your tool, what you see your customers using it for most often?
Yeah. So the first and probably most common set of use cases is handling email. So when an email comes in, kind of like the example I was mentioning before, when the email comes in, I want to figure out what kind of email it is. And then depending on what kind of email it is, I might want to do something different with it. In some cases, I might want to extract some information and put it in a spreadsheet. In some cases, I might want to summarize a PDF and forward it to someone else over Slack. In some cases, I might want to draft a reply to the email. In some cases, I might want to label the email. In some cases, I might want to archive the email. And email is one example of what I would call personal productivity use cases. People who want to handle their own email. An adjacent set of use cases in personal productivity would be, for example, calendar management. And that was the use case I was actually thinking we could build together. You can create an AI agent that automatically sends you a meeting briefing every time you have a meeting with someone you've never met with before. Say, hey, you're about to meet Will. Here's his background. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Here's some information. Here's the last email you two exchanged, which has context about your call. You could build this personal productivity agent to automatically reschedule meetings for you when there are conflicts. You could build it to automatically remind people that you're going to meet with who have not RSVP'd yet that they need to RSVP. So there's a big class of like personal productivity use cases that are mostly around email, calendar, to-do management. That's one big chunk.
All
A
right.
second big class of use cases is around customer interaction and customer relationship management, broadly speaking. So for example, a new prospect comes in and I want to do some research on them to qualify that prospect. And then I want to send them a personalized email about the demo we're going to set up. Or a deal in our CRM reaches a state of closed won and I want to automatically create a contract with the right parameters. Or a support ticket comes in from a customer and I want to look up what plan they're on in our CRM so I know how urgently to deal with the support. So there's a big class of use cases around customer interaction. There's also a big class of use cases around marketing, content creation. For example, let's say you want to have an AI agent that creates a lifecycle marketing email campaign that helps educate a user in onboarding and then upsell them to paid and then get a review from them. Or you want to build a workflow. This is one that I use myself, which is every time I make a YouTube video, I have my little AI agent automatically create a blog post, a LinkedIn post, and a Twitter post for me to review based on that. And so those I would say the big three, like personal productivity, customer relationship management, and sales, and then marketing. But we also see a huge long tail because we serve like a very wide variety of businesses. We work with an ice salesman in Pennsylvania and a chiropractor in Thailand and a pro basketball team in Ireland and a photography studio in Australia. And all of these, businesses have really different bespoke use cases. And so they can build AI agents to do custom tasks that don't fit neatly into any of those three categories.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, let's dive into it.
Let's make one.
Why don't you share your screen? And this is
Yeah.
an audio version, but I will be giving some sort of play-by-play and describe what I see. I need to make it so that you can share your screen.
Yes, that would be great. Thanks.
Let me do that. There's my cursor. Okay, so go ahead and share your screen, Jacob.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Right.
And what you're seeing here is our AI agent creation platform. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name our agent, and I'm going to call this one meeting prep. Because what this is going to do is it's going to help me prepare for meetings by giving me information about the person I'm about to meet.
And I'll say that I'll just describe the screen. Yeah. It's a very kind of bare bones, kind of almost, early days Google search screen. It just says meeting prep at the top. We named it. It has a little button for editor. It has a button for add roles and share. And then a big thing in the center, it says add trigger with a plus sign. So I'm imagining that the next thing we do
that's where we're going to start. So the first thing we do is our trigger, and that's what happens in the outside world that causes our agent to wake up and start doing work on our behalf. So in this case, the trigger is going to be when an event is upcoming in Google Calendar.
Yeah, that's great.
And so you can see here, we have a bunch of different types of triggers. A trigger could happen based on, like I mentioned, an event in an application. You could have a trigger happen on a scheduled basis, like I want to do it every day or once a week. But in this case, I'm going to navigate to Google Calendar, which is the calendar tool that I use. And within the Google Calendar menu, I can select which trigger I want my AI agent to wake up for. I could do it when a new event gets scheduled. I could do it when
I put you on the spot and I suggest one.
Yeah, let's do it.
How about if we do something where, this is not a bad practice, by the way, where why don't we say every day at 5 p.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. local, we will look at tomorrow's calendar and look at all the events, and we'll email the person and say, hey, Jane, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on our Zoom. If anything's changed in your calendar, let me know and we can reschedule, right?
Let's do it. Let's build exactly that one.
All right, cool.
So in that case, we're not going to use the Google Calendar event upcoming trigger because that would be applying to a specific event. We're going to use a scheduled trigger.
All right.
And we're going to say that we're going to do this every day. And what I'm showing on screen is a little time picker, which is saying that this is going to happen daily at 5 p.m. Perfect. And if you want, you could be clever and say, I only want to do it on weekdays. But let's say for now, we're going to do it every day at 5 p.m.
All right, sounds good.
So now the first thing we want to tell our AI to do is look at all the meetings that I have tomorrow. And
Perfect.
so now we need to go ask Google Calendar, what meetings do I have tomorrow?
And I'll tell listeners that earlier it was just all it was a little plus button says add trigger. Now it says, since we gave the trigger, it's saying add a step. So we're adding a step.
Yep. And so we're adding a step. We're in a menu that's showing us the steps we can add in Google Calendar.
Yeah.
And the step we're going to add is find event,
Cool.
event or events.
Nice.
And we're going to tell it which calendar to look at. In this case, we're going to use, my primary calendar. And then we're going to return all events that match the criteria we're searching for.
All right.
And then we're going to enter the criteria of which events we want. And in this case, we want all events tomorrow. So we're going to add a filter that says the start time, comes after today.
Right.
And the start time comes before
Okay.
today plus 2.
Right.
So it's after today, before today plus 2, which would mean it's happening tomorrow.
Okay.
And next we get to tell the system, what should we do if we don't find any events? If you have nothing on your calendar tomorrow, you have two options. One is the AI could say, I failed. I'm so sorry. I failed to do my job. And it would send you a notification and say, I'm so sorry. I failed. I couldn't do this. Help. Or we could just continue, because if you have a day with no meetings, that's actually going to be totally fine. We're just going to not do anything. We don't need to notify you and tell you that we had no meetings that we found. So I'm going to do continue.
Continue. All right.
So now that we've found those events, for each event, we want to do something. And so we have a construct in the product called an iterator. And what an iterator lets you do is it takes in a list of items and it lets you do something for each one.
Sure.
And so I'm going to press that plus button again. I'm going to type in iterator, and the list I'm going to select. This is how the way this works is the output of one step can become the input of the next step, because often you need to reference previous information to know what to do next. And so in this case, the list of events we want to iterate over is the list of events we just found in the previous step. So you can see that it's referencing the previous step and it's pulling in that list. And we want to run these next set of steps for every item in that list.
All right.
Okay. So now we want to, let's use some AI judgment here. And let's do 2 cases. If there's a case where everyone has responded to the meeting, let's just say, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. If there's a case where not everyone has responded to the meeting, let's send out an email like, hey, just checking, does this time still work for everyone?
Right.
And we're going to ask our AI to make that decision for us.
Okay.
So now I'm going to add a step, and I'm going in that step menu to an AI step, and I'm selecting custom prompt, which basically means I want to give my AI some custom instructions of what it needs to do.
Okay.
And what you see here is a box that says prompt, give the model detailed instructions, insert relevant data for context. And we have some examples that you can look at, but here I'm going to say, please review the guest list of the attached meeting and tell me if everyone has responded yes, or if some people have not yet responded or declined, for example. And then for the AI to be able to do this task, I need to give it the calendar event, because it needs to be able to look at the guest RSVPs. And so I'm going to go to attach data, and I'm going to attach the event.
Okay.
So the AI is going to look at that event, it's going to review the guest list, and it's going to tell me, has everyone responded yes, or have some people not responded or declined? And then I need to tell the AI what output I want. What do I want to get back from that? And in this case, I want to get back a yes or no variable that says everyone has RSVP'd yes. And so if the AI says everyone has RSVP'd yes, we're going to send that looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow email. If not everyone has RSVP'd yes, we're going to send the, hey, can y'all still make it email. And so now we're going to create what's called a path. And a path is what lets us make that sort of either or decision. Do we do this or do we do that, depending on the output of AI? So the first branch of our path will be everyone replied. And I have a little interface here that lets me decide which rules determine whether we should go down that path. And in this case, I'm going to select everyone has RSVP'd yes is yes. And that's the everyone replied path. The other path is not everyone. Everyone has replied. And so now in the everyone replied path, I want to send an email. And I'm going to send it to the list of all of the guests of their meeting. And I'm going to say, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And then I can type in the body of the email that's going to be sent automatically. I could ask the AI to write it for me, but in this case, a simple form email will work. Hi, all. Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow and then I'm going to pull in the start time of the event. And I'm going to format that. I'm going to pull in the start time of the event. Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow at start time. And then in the other case, where not everyone has replied, I'm going to write a different email. And I'm going to say meeting tomorrow as the subject. I'm going to say, hi, all. Can you take a look and let me know if you can make it to the meeting tomorrow at start time? And this is kind of a contrived example. I would probably want to write it a little more politely if I was doing this in a real business context. But that's the basic idea. Every day at 5 p.m., our AI agent wakes up. It looks for all the events on our calendar the next day. For each event on our calendar the next day, it tries to reason about whether everyone has responded or not. If everyone has responded, it just sends a quick confirmation, see you all there. If not everyone has responded, it asks people for responses.
Okay, amazing. So, and just to kind of give a little bit of what I'm seeing, there's a very visual flow path of the trigger, the action to find events, and then this to-do loop or this from to loop of doing it. Hey, do the following for each one of these events that you found tomorrow. And then there's the decision, and you can see visually that there's kind of an A and a B, and the conditions on which it would do A, conditions it would do B, and then the action it would do. So very intuitive. And then when we were actually doing those actions, there was a whole set of boxes for sending that email, for example, where you can pull in variables like the time. And we were just going quickly, but I imagine that if you wanted to take a little bit more time, you could probably put in a variable for the first name of the person, so you could go to each person individually.
Exactly. If I was doing this for real, I would go one step further and I would say, not just determine whether everyone has replied, give me the list of people who have not yet replied.
Right.
And then I want to send a personal email to each of them like, hey, Will, noticed you haven't replied yet to the meeting tomorrow. Will you be able to make it? Which would be, an easy extension on top of what we've done so far.
And we could obviously customize this where we just did replied or didn't. But if someone had, if it was declined it and it was a one-on-one meeting, then you would probably be able to build something that say, hey, I noticed you declined the meeting. Would you like to reschedule? Here's my Calendly link. And then it could maybe even delete the meeting from your calendar so that you don't see it on your calendar anymore. Something like that, right?
Exactly.
You can imagine this is just a quick view. All right. So this was, I could see now. Question about this is, even though this is no code, there's some sophistication to it and knowing how to pull in the variables. Does your team have sort of an extra pro version or something where you can get like someone who's familiar with how to create these to help people set them up? Or
so our primary target audience is totally non-technical people who have not only never written code, but have never even used no-code tools, because even no-code tools are pretty technical. And so our ambition is to make the product so easy that everyone can use it. I agree that it's not quite there yet, but we've got some stuff coming soon that I think will make it dramatically easier. And then, yes, if you're unable to make it work on your own, we have a partner program where we have a bunch of automation and AI experts and agencies that can work with you either on like a one-off basis to set up one thing or on an ongoing retainer to help advise your business on how to use AI everywhere.
Okay, great. So there's like a partner program of
we're primarily it's primarily self-serve with a partner program.
Great. Great. Okay. Yeah, because maybe someone would, want to be able to see a few examples of this done for them before they start doing it on their own, or have someone at least to to
Yeah,
debug.
and another thing that I've been spending a lot of time doing is I have a bunch of YouTube tutorials that are
Okay.
actually pretty useful because I think you made a good point there, which is that to actually create that workflow, even that simple one that we just created, takes a bit of skill and knowledge.
Right.
But once you see it done, you can understand sort of what's happening at each step. And
Mhm.
so what we've seen in practice is that once people watch a couple of YouTube tutorials and follow the tutorials and build the same workflow for themselves, they get pretty familiar and can build the next one themselves. So my hope is that everyone listening would be able to do it fully themselves without needing a partner. But if you have like really complex business needs, like you want to set up a 50-step process based on your CRM that connects to a dozen other tools, then you might need help. But if you're just trying to set up something that, prepares you for a calendar event or extracts information from one of your emails, you should be able to do that on your own.
Tell me just about the pricing of your tool. How does that work?
So it's kind of a standard self-serve freemium model. There's a free tier, there's a pro tier, a team tier, and then an enterprise tier. In general, the subscriptions are very cheap, but then you pay based on how much you use the product. So in the free tier, you get 200 steps and 500 AI credits. And so the workflow that we just built was 4 steps, but it runs for each meeting. And so if you have a very busy calendar, you would probably use up your free tier allocation in about a week just from that workflow, because that's a pretty demanding workflow. You're asking us to do a lot for every event. So there's steps and AI credits, and then the first paid tier is $9 a month. And that includes significantly more steps and AI credits. And then the team tier is if you want to use it with multiple people in your company. And that starts at $59 a month. And then once you've bought those subscriptions, all of which are quite reasonable, you pay based on how much value you're getting. And so as you find yourself using the tool more and more, it needs more steps, it needs more AI reasoning, then you pay for kind of bundles of credits on top of that. But I think the thing you should assume is that like a typical business who set this up for themselves for 5 to 10 different workflows that all run pretty regularly, a typical price we see people pay is like between 100 and 200 bucks a month.
Okay. All right.
If you're really getting value out of the product, you'll pay 100 200 bucks a month, but hopefully you'll be getting much more than that in terms of like the time savings and the value on the back end.
Sure. Okay. And we talked about the use cases, kind of going through email, customer service, marketing type things, customizing marketing. I've seen some people, might have been even your post, we talked about building, for example, an agent that would search LinkedIn for
Yep.
people who fit a certain profile. Just tell us a little bit about that agent. People might be interested to hear about that.
Yeah, so that one that I published was a pretty generic tool that is a helper that finds LinkedIn profiles.
All right.
And so the way it works is you put in whatever information you've got, first name, last name, email address, city, company name, and we will try to find the right LinkedIn profile for that person. And then you can do with the LinkedIn profile whatever you want afterwards. You could analyze, you could create a meeting briefing for it, you could create an applicant summary for it, you could create a prospect summary for it, whatever. And so the way that works, it's kind of a classic multi-step use case where first what it does is it automatically searches on Google for whatever information you've got plus LinkedIn profile. I don't know if you've ever used this technique, but I use this all the time. It's like when I want to find someone's LinkedIn profile, I just type in everything I know about them and then LinkedIn profile. And almost always like there will be a result in the top 5 of Google search that's that LinkedIn profile. So after that search has been executed automatically, the AI says, of these 10 search results that Google has produced, which is the LinkedIn profile that best matches Will or whoever I'm searching for based on the information. Then once you have that perfect LinkedIn profile, the agent can go look at their LinkedIn profile and pull back the information. And then you can use the information for whatever you want. You can format into a pre-briefing note. You can create it as a competitive research report. But the core of the agent is it's really good at taking in whatever information you've got about someone and finding their LinkedIn profile.
Now, is that using your own LinkedIn account? Because LinkedIn sort of, you have to be kind of logged in to be able to
So that one actually doesn't. It only works for public profiles. So if you're searching for someone who doesn't have a public LinkedIn profile, this will not work. But for everyone who set a public LinkedIn profile, which is most people because it's the default, Google has indexed the public profile. And so you can just search Google and then extract the URL from Google. So you don't need to connect your LinkedIn credentials at all for that because you're just using Google and AI to do it for you.
Okay. All right. That's a pretty cool use case. So where can listeners find Relay.App? Where would you point them?
Yeah, so Relay.App is our website. If you type Relay.App into your browser, you'll get to us. But beyond that, there's a couple things I want to highlight on the website. Number one is we have a gallery of common use cases. So if you're like, I want to get started with AI, but I don't really know what to do, go to the gallery. You'll see the LinkedIn profile finder there. You'll see competitive research there. You'll see pre-meeting dossiers there. You'll see extract information from emails there. Then I'll give you kind of an idea of what the tool can do and get you going. And then connect with me on LinkedIn. Once or twice a week, I post. I typically just, when I make an agent for myself, I typically post about it on LinkedIn. And that is another good way to like stay on the pulse of ideas of what you might be able to use either our tool, Relay.App, for, or any your agent building platform of choice. And so, yeah, check out our website and check me out on LinkedIn.
All right. And I see that one right here on your inspiration page, inspiration gallery, the LinkedIn profile finder. So
Yep, that's exactly the one. Yep.
So you can see the logic that Jacob used to build that.
Yeah, and the one in the gallery actually has a cool little addition, which is AI agents these days are pretty good at knowing how good of a job they did and whether they succeeded. And so in some cases, if you have a really common name, for example, and not enough information to disambiguate, the AI will say, here are 5 profiles. I do not know which one is the right one. Please, human, help me. And so there we have a human in the loop step where we can say, here's the 5 profiles I found. Can you tell me which one of these is the right, if you know? And so that can be a really important element of making AI work effectively, is like having human judgment at key points in the workflow.
Very cool. All right. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for joining today. Great discussion.
Thanks, Will. That was a blast. Good to talk to you.